Last time I was so happy to be brewing a new cider, learning all my lessons from the first time, have a plan and just let it roll. Nice cider quickly at the end. What happens when the plan fails? Well, let me tell you a story. Now, the last few days have been particularly cool. So at first I thought maybe the fact that fermentation hasn't started was simply down to the fact that the weather was starting to sort of go the wrong way and actually be a little cooler. So yesterday, 24 hours after starting, I decided to move locations. Well, not me specifically, the cider. And no bubbles. So a few things. One, was the bubbler just really, really loose and so I needed to tighten things up? Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. Step 2, move it to a much warmer location, which I've done. However, 24 hours later, that warmer location does not seem to have made any difference either. So it's now been almost 3 days and nothing is really happening. I did give it a bit of a swirl. I thought that might help just invigorate it a little. That hasn't helped. So now I'm on plan number 3, which is to give it a bit of yeast nutrient to see if that will jig it along a little bit. Okay. Now, yeast nutrient is about 1 gram per gallon. This is about half a teaspoon, which turns out to be almost 5 grams. But let's give it as much help as we possibly can. I'm also going to give it a bit of a swirl. So take 3, warmer location, nice good swirl, a bit of yeast nutrient to see if that will help it along. Made sure all of my airlocks are tight, so hopefully no CO2 escaping through any of them. And I'm afraid I'm just going to have to cross my fingers. I think I'm out of ideas if this doesn't work. Well, my bubbler may not be bubbling, but something is going on. So time to revert to the hydrometer to see if anything is changing. It seems to be even bubbling in the tube. I think I was worrying unnecessarily. Blimey, there was even some fizz. This super simple cider is just confounding me. Things may be absolutely fine and I just don't know for sure. So there are a few things going on here. First of all, I used some plastic containers, some 5-litre containers that was just trying to do this a little bit, on the cheap to see how that worked. I'm not sure if that's been a factor. I made my own hole in the lid to put a bung in. I don't know if that is a factor, that seal just isn't good enough, and that's why the airlock is not bubbling. It's a 5-litre container and I had 4 litres of apple juice. So there was a whole litre gap at the top. I don't know if that was a factor. But one way or another, despite the fact I thought nothing was happening, when I did the hydrometer reading, clearly something was happening. But we've gone back again to sort of not clearing, not seeming to do anything, and nothing happening in the bubbler. So, and the other factor was the yeast I'd had in the fridge for a while, so I didn't know if the yeast was active. So I did add some yeast nutrient, because I thought, given that nothing seemed to be happening, though now I'm not certain that was true, and it was happening, I just wasn't visibly seeing it. Because when I took the hydrometer reading, the specific gravity had come down quite a lot. So, but then we seem to have gone back exactly the same thing again. Now, one hypothesis here is it all just does happen really quickly. You know, my DIY bubbler may or may not be working, but one way or another, it has actually, you know, fermented really quickly. So what I'm going to do today is two things. One is I'm going to rack it, so I'm going to move it to another vessel, another plastic vessel, but you know, another vessel. I'm going to take another hydrometer reading to have a look at that, and based on that, I'm going to probably leave it for a few more days and see what happens. But you know, that's about where I've got to. I'm a little bit stuck, and I'm not sure whether it's good or it's bad. There's a little bit of sort of little white foamy bits floating on the top. They're not black or mouldy or anything like that. So far, I don't think there's anything to worry about there. And there is a little bit of sediment I can now see at the bottom. So there's lots of things that seem to be happening correctly. Just my DIY bubbler either doesn't work, or the gap is just too big, or you know, the plastic vessels are just too leaky. However, we're going to plough on and see what we can do.